It's Tara Boothby and Ellis Chan, Dr. Ellis.
Hello, hi.
Dr. Ellis is in the house. He's in Sojourn with me, and this is quite a treat. I know you guys all are familiar with Ellis, but Ellis has moved his practice into Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're just hanging out, having coffee and visiting about all things life and COVID and kids and everything. So we thought, why don't we chat a bit about separation anxiety? So what do you think, Ellis? I mean, you work more with kids these days than I do. And I guess, how would you, if somebody was asking, what is separation anxiety, how might you describe it?
I think the way that I might describe it is that it falls kind of under the category, the umbrella of anxiety in general. Anxiety might be like your mind, you have worry thoughts, you're scared, you're thinking about scary things, your body's activated, maybe fight or flight. But I think the thing that I might notice with separation anxiety is that it's very specifically tailored towards separation from something that feels safe. I think especially in the pandemic, my kid is not exclusive to this too. Separation from something that feels safe is usually family.
Yes.
Mom and dad, maybe.
Yeah, I notice it with my kids as well. So I noticed dropping my daughter off at school is harder. She usually will just walk right into the school. Lately she waves a lot more. She comes back in. She comes back for a hug 2 or 3 times. I also noticed with my daughter that the lifting of masks was really hard on her. And it took her a while to adjust to trying not to wear a mask at school, but she'll say like, I feel shy, I want to wear my mask. She's 5, you know, it's interesting. I don't know what sort of kids believe or what sense they make of masks, but I noticed her anxiety, that's how she describes it. I'm feeling shy. And then with my son, who, and this is, it's harder to explain because he's 4 and he's very isolated. We didn't put him in daycare or anything like that. And his social anxiety is, he can't really describe it to us. And he just seems to get more flooded and then awkward. So,
yeah, that sounds like a lot of the experiences that I'm seeing with kids in my kids' school.
Yeah.
Are dealing with these things. I think we have everyone kind of had their own flow during the pandemic, and some of the kids were going to daycare, some of them were going to school, and some of them were staying home, and they're all going through their own adjustments as we constantly had all these changes and adjustments that they constantly had to adhere to. That I think the one, especially when you've been kind of staying at home and then now you're just starting to come back into school, that's a huge adjustment over there. Something that you've kind of gotten used to, accustomed to, maybe staying close to home, staying close to family. That's a big shift over there. It can be hard to say to separate.
And I mean, we like to be comfortable. You know, it makes sense. So with our children, I feel insecure, I feel anxious, I want to be comfortable. So why wouldn't I want to go home? Why wouldn't I want to be with mommy or daddy or, you know, grandparent? Because I'm not sure of myself or this situation. So in attachment terms, we'd say it's a lot about like my beliefs about myself, my beliefs about people, and my beliefs about the world around us. And COVID has really shaken everything up. So with the little ones, it's harder because they don't know. They can't just say, oh, maybe my beliefs about people have changed. You know,
Sure.
I don't know if I trust the government. All these things that grown-ups are talking about, kids are like, I don't know. I just feel weird. So I just wish I could wear my mask again.
Sure. I think especially when you say little kids too, they don't have the worldviews that we might have as adults. And sometimes it's easy to forget that. And we're like, okay, we're just going to adjust. But like, let's say like for me, I'm in my 30s and I've had these years of what does life look like outside of a pandemic? What does life look like outside of restrictions? But for our kids, like let's say you've got a kid in like preschool, they've had 4 years, and like let's pretend we're saying 2 years of pandemic time. That's half of their life they've experienced this. This is how they view the world. That's a huge shift to suddenly say, all right, now we're going back to school. Now we're going to change things with masks. We're going to change things about social distancing. Are we allowed to? Are we allowed to have physical contact? Is that cool? Is that okay to forget about bubbles and things like that?
Right.
It's a big shift, massive shift.
It's huge, and I think too, like when we're talking about that separation anxiety and social anxiety, so it's interesting to notice the like late adolescent population as well, where I feel such empathy for kids who were 17 when this started, or 18, and you know those are formative years where you're gonna come of age in Alberta and go to the bar and kind of figure out the social awkwardness of meeting and you know all those things, trying to find a date and stuff, and it's really been a strange time. So then now there's people after 2 years where there's these young people who would want to make friends or fall in love, and it's like, how do you do it? And then it's hard to know, like, how as an adult, so as a parent or an auntie or an uncle or a psychologist, like how do we help create some solution?
Sure.
So how do we help people problem solve? I'm lonely and I want to meet somebody. I don't even know what the rules are. And so here, that I think that's interesting too for us. Like we're all in the same soup here. All the rules are changing. How do we have social relationships? So the social anxiety, of course, it's really normal with children. The separation anxiety is super normal with children. But I think we all kind of have it.
Sure.
You know, like how, like as adults, it makes sense that we have a bit of separation anxiety. We've all been super isolated.
Yeah, I think like even especially as you talked about teens and adolescents, that's something that I do see a lot. Like if you naturally felt a little bit anxious in crowds and a little bit anxious about what do people think of me, I feel like everyone's looking at me, natural kind of thought patterns that tend to fall into the period of adolescence. And then you were able to get away from that when schools went offline or when they went online. And then now you're shifting back into it. That's a big shift in going back into this. Over there, going from the safety, the comfort of maybe home, and then now you're going to be in this dense population again over there. Big shifts for sure. How do you make relationships? How do you feel comfortable?
Well, and also how do we normalize and acknowledge the griefs and losses? You know, like kids who lost their high school graduation or their grade 9 grad. You know, people athletes who lost a year of a sport or two, or they lost the passion. So,
Sure.
You know, volleyball players who are like, meh, I don't care. Hockey players who are like, meh, I give up. It's sad. There's these losses for our kids and for us. You know, what are some of the things that we've given up on?
Sure.
Or even what is, I think about this, like what is self-care? What was appealing to me prior to the pandemic? Like I like going to West Edmonton Mall and having a cup of tea or coffee and just walking around the mall. I don't know, like I don't think of that anymore. And that's a loss then.
Sure. I think like I think coming to terms with this and then starting to shift myself into that. I love having a drink in a cafe. That's probably one of I love just like being in the midst of a really awesome community and having a really good drink with me. I have to figure out how to do this. And I think like just going back to anxiety, separation anxiety, or me separating, getting used to getting away from the comfort of home and going and reintegrating. It's baby steps. I think that's really important. Instead of instead of flooding myself, unfortunately that does happen in some situations where you just get flooded. You have to go back in and there's not a transition. But if you do have that option to go slowly, take steps, but do some exposure, this might be like me, maybe I don't sit down right in the cafe in the middle of peak West Edmonton Mall time, but maybe I'm just gonna go just kind of on the outskirts. Maybe I'll go to a quieter wing of West Ed and just hang out there, grab a drink over there where maybe it's not so busy, and just slowly build myself up over there. And then with that exposure, maybe it's not so bad.
I think that's it. I love being reminded right now, and I've had other colleagues to say small goals, you know, and it's such a beautiful reminder for me, and I think it's important for everybody that it's just like measurable and manageable, baby steps. What can I do? Where am I comfortable? We need to get out. Isolation is the enemy of mental health. Isolation is the enemy of mental health. It's not good for us. We need to co-regulate. I was sharing with Ellis when Megan and I did our little video on attachment, and we were just like, I could feel the co-regulation, and afterwards Megan was like, it's like crazy to be in a room with you. And even being with Ellis too, it's like our bodies are meant to be with people. It's our biology, it's a science, it's not just an attachment thing. That's a nature thing.
Sure.
So even with the little ones, these small goals, like for my daughter Ellie, she wanted to mask to go into school, and I wanted her not to. And that's my opinion. You can have whatever opinion you want. But her little opinion was she felt safe with a mask on, and so trying to just encourage her, challenge her, because I saw value in that, and I'm her mother, so I get to. And then noticing, like, as she could, and the little ways that she would like take chances or not wear her mask. If she was with me walking in to go swimming, she wouldn't wear a mask, and then eventually she just started to at times not wear a mask in class, or she might pull it down when they're singing. She's 5 and she doesn't wear a mask safely. She just wears it because she's supposed to. But it's interesting to like, how do we keep in pace with the little ones with their little goals? And it's okay to struggle. And what I said to Megan is, it's like, it might not make sense to me, but it's making sense to them. So even with co-sleeping is a really normal thing right now. I don't know why my kids are co-sleeping with me, but they do.
Sure.
And when I was little and I was scared and I would go into my parents' room, I knew why I was going. They might not. But it's a child's mind. So it's hard, and then we wonder, what's wrong with my kid, or am I doing a bad job parenting? Who worries about being a bad parent? Who thinks they're a bad parent? Right? Like, I mean, you heard it here first. Ellis and I are bad parents. No. But we worry.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is, it is, family creates a lot of sense of safety and predictability, and that's probably the one thing that was consistent in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think separating at school is going on. We're seeing a lot where it's hard to go into school and say goodbye to mom and dad in the
So
parking
hard.
lot.
Mm-hmm. It's so hard, you know. And it's what's interesting too is because we started the vlog at the beginning of the pandemic, the day after we locked down Sojourn or went remote. I just started videoing because I wanted to have a free resource for people just in case they couldn't access mental health services, and that's why this vlog is here. But I one of them came up on my memories, and I decided to listen to myself, and I was speaking. It was like the 3rd day into the lockdown. I spoke about waking up early at 5 a.m. and I was afraid. I felt anxious, and I just grabbed my husband's hand who was sleeping. And that's exactly what we're talking about.
Sure.
From cradle to the grave, when we're afraid, we want to reach out for a hand. And what the circle of security people will teach us is that if we can't reach out for a safe hand, we'll reach out for an unsafe hand. And I guess that's a big key with parenting is when our children are reaching, when our people are reaching, we want to be the hand that they know they can reach for.
Sure.
And hopefully we can just be as safe as possible whenever possible. You know, sometimes we're not going to be safe. Sometimes I'm not a safe hand because I'm a person like everybody else.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
You have your own stresses, things that come your way.
Yeah, and if I'm unsafe, then the goal is to repair it.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's an important one. I think that it's there will be ruptures in that relationship. There will be things that happen, but what can you do to repair it, I think, is an important thing to remember.
Yeah.
That you can repair it.
You can repair it, and don't worry about doing repair perfectly. Again, repair is about co-regulating, and if we are parents who are just trying to co-regulate in that repair process and we're not as worried about the right words, then our kids will have more likelihood of being raised to be people who see the positive intentionality in somebody trying to repair with them.
Sure.
So that it's like, okay, your central nervous system's trying to do something with me, even though your words might not be working as good as they could be.
Sure. Yeah, I think like in the end, with trying to support your kids and trying to help them get through something like this, I really like the idea of small, observable, measurable kind of goals. Do things one at a time. I also just have that gradual exposure, but also recognize when they're making those small steps over there. I like that when you pointed out like walking with your daughter over there. These small things to help them notice, them when they're actually making changes. Kind of view it from their perspective as little ones, that this is a big shift for them, and when they are making those steps, it's something to celebrate.
Definitely. And reaching out to resources, lots of the schools have like a school counselor or social worker, and if you want to touch base with them, that is a free resource. Or it doesn't, I mean, if you have a mental health provider, if you're struggling, or your person, one of your people are, reach out to your mental health provider. I also love, like, there's so many great books out there. One of the best books, it's not a very well-known book. I like the title. Some people might say it's kind of a bad title, but it's called No Such Thing as a Bad Kid. Your kid sees you walking around with that book and they're like, what do you mean? But No Such Thing as a Bad Kid by Charlie Applestein. And it's a strength-based approach to parenting, or actually to child and youth care is what it's designed for. One of the simple things Charlie notes is trumpet success. So we have measurable and manageable goals, and then when they get that little goal, that we give them a good old pat on the back, or it's like, hey, look at you. I noticed you. Delight. Just utter delight when people do the best that they can.
Yeah. I really like that. I think that it's that delight, that praise. I am a fan of that, just on those little noticeable moments.
Yeah. What about you, Ellis? Do you have a good parenting book that you kind of go to?
I think my go-to parenting book, there's definitely a couple, but I do like a lot of Dan Siegel. Dan Siegel's probably my favorite because it kind of, he brings a lot of the neuroscience into why you might want to do some of the things that parenting books might suggest. And then so it especially like if you're looking for something a little bit tangible over there, you might have heard really good opinions, and you might have seen these really good opinions work, and it kind of also helps you know why the physiology supports that over there. And there's definitely a couple, and I always get the name mixed up. It's like worry-free discipline, drama-free discipline. It's one of those.
I think it's drama-free, but I'm not the expert on that. So
it's a good one. I like it, and it's very parent-friendly over there.
Yeah, and whatever is parent-friendly is helpful, right? We want things that are easy. Our brains are hot. Don't be afraid to read things on audio.
Sure.
Listen, don't be afraid to listen to books on audio. Whatever helps. If you'd rather just watch some YouTubes or different things, looking for good advice. The more we pursue good advice, the more we find it, the more we can push away bad advice as well. So it's just like to go easy on ourselves. The more we have grace for ourselves, the more we can have grace and compassion for the people that we love and we're caring for. And it's okay, it's a struggle. And I think the other thing too is I really appreciate the other parents that I speak to who are just transparent with their struggle and we're all struggling. It's hard to be parents, and it's hard to be parents during a pandemic
Sure.
and a war.
Yeah.
It's
There's a
hard.
lot of things happening.
It's hard, there's a lot of things happening, and it's okay to know that it's hard. Something we can do for the community of parents is share our struggles and have empathy for each other when somebody is being vulnerable about how hard it is to parent.
I think, like, even as you say struggle, I think one of the ones, like, as you're talking about co-sleeping, and I think this is a time question is about co-sleeping, and I certainly noticed that with my kid during the pandemic. A lot of need for closeness and safety, and the struggle that we'll often get is like, is this okay? And I think like it's definitely something that there's a lot of I think a lot of cultural elements to that, where it's like, what do other people think? What do other parents, what do other families think? What do their kids, friends think about co-sleeping? It's definitely, it's hard to make a decision as a parent. Probably the one thing I might say is that, like, the just with earlier ages, there is probably a little bit more of a line over there about that with I think it's the American Pediatric Association talking about co-sleeping and safety with SIDS. But like once you've kind of looked into that, maybe that's something to go further, and that's where it's great. Talk to your health provider.
Yeah.
Talk to a mental health therapist. Talk to your physician, because I think like this is definitely something that I see a lot of questions before the pandemic, but especially the pandemic now.
Yeah, or the early beginnings nurses is something that we have in Alberta, and they're amazing. If you are a new mom or you're expecting and you're having your own separation anxiety with your baby, there's bassinets you can get that will sit in the bed, or you can get a bassinet that will come right beside the bed while the baby is too young that it's not necessarily healthy to have your baby in your bed. And then as well, if you're worried about the age of a child, like older children that are co-sleeping, I just think right now is a very hard time to evaluate. I don't know if we can really expect even teenagers to feel completely comfortable sleeping on their own right now. It's scary out there, and so it's nice to have somebody. And we're more touch starved because the kids don't get to touch each other enough. There's not as many hugging. I mean, I think now they're hugging more, but our people need to touch us.
Sure.
And if you are not getting touched enough, hugging is really important. So maybe consider some measurable and manageable goals about people you might feel safe to actually have physical touch with, or to go for a massage. If you have benefits, use your benefits, especially your massage benefits. Those are the ones to always use, okay? And then that is a direct order.
I forgot about the nurses.
Yeah, they're amazing.
That's a great resource.
They're so good.
Use those a lot.
Yeah. When we had our babies, man, those nurses are just awesome. And when you're a new mom, your bundle of nerves, no matter what, or how many books you've read. So
sure, great resource.
Yeah, and thank you for highlighting with the babies. We want to be really conscientious and keep them safe. That's not a great time to co-sleep. So yeah, awesome. So separation anxiety, it's kind of a normal thing at any age. It can happen, elderly as well. And it's just like for us to be soft and gracious. The other thing which was beautiful, my daughter's kindergarten teacher, who I just think is amazing, at the beginning of the year, she gave all of us the book, The Invisible Thread. And Megan actually has a video of her reading that story, which will be up on our YouTube channel as well. Great little book. We all have these little threads that are attached to the people who love us, and we can just be reminiscent of that. We hold others in our mind.
Sure. I think that's there's a really good, I'm always forgetting these titles, the author, but there's one called Dear Girl,
Oh.
and another one, Dear Baby. And right at the end, it's very similar to that invisible thread. Dear baby, remember, I'll always be there for you. I love that idea over there. That connection.
Yeah, and any little books are so good. Like the Robert Munch, I'll Love You Forever. You know, or I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. Whatever little stories. There's so many gorgeous stories. So a trip to Indigo to go through the kids book section, see if there's something beautiful for your young child, but even for us. You know, sometimes kids books are just kind of great for us, or I wouldn't be offended if I was a teenager and somebody thoughtfully gave me a book that might just like really cherish me. Then again, maybe I would have, because I was a teenage girl, so. Awesome. Okay, I don't know. I mean, I feel like we could talk forever.
Yeah.
Again, I, anything that touches on attachment, it's just like, let's keep going forever.
Sure.
But any other sort of pieces, separation anxiety, social anxiety?
I think the one that I like to use a lot is, I tend to use this more with younger kids, my kid in particular, but I often will use a transition object for them when they do separate. And it's something tangible that they can hold on to. The tangible part's important because sometimes it's hard for them to conceptualize that invisible thread. It's something that they can hold on to that reminds them of what might make them feel safe, like maybe mom, maybe dad, family, grandparents. The important thing is when I give it to them during that transition time, the stress time, I also make sure that they have to give it back afterwards when we come back. Because if you leave it there, you naturally desensitize to these things. So this is kind of like where you get like a bed full of teddy bears from grandpa and grandma and mom and dad. And they're like, oh, none of these really make me feel safe. Well, you forget about them. You desensitize over time. So when I take it back from them, it kind of makes it really special. The other thing that I always love to tie in is the sense of smell. And we know that smell bypasses the thalamus when it's going in through sensory input. And where smell ends up in the brain, it triggers a much stronger memory. And so when I can tie in smell with that transition object, I get stronger memories elicited about something safe, like mom and dad. And so like this, for one that was a really common one for separation at bedtime was pillowcases. Mom and dad's pillowcase, it catches a lot of the oils and stuff from mom and dad's scalp or their neck. And it smells like mom and dad and makes them feel safe when they can smell that and elicit that memory over there. That's not to say that you need to give them your like used yoga shirt that's like reeking badly over there, but
sort of swass therapy.
Yeah. Right? That might elicit different memories over there. But yeah, that's something that I use quite frequently, and I find that helps a lot, just to make them feel good at night.
That's a golden nugget. That's good, and I'm glad you remembered transition objects. And I had never thought about that, or I was never trained in that, like, bring it back. That's genius. Transition objects, it's cute, right? Like my daughter gave one of her stuffies to her brother. She takes it back. So she must have consulted with you. But he sleeps better, right? Like it's beautiful, you know, like having that reminder, that invisible thread, or having this little thing. As an adult, and if you watch our vlogs and you see when I shoot it through my Zoom, on my wall I have anchoring images, and this is something that I've encouraged our staff. It's like, let's have some anchors in our offices. What pictures are good for you as a clinician? So I have two, like more than two right now. I have 4 on my wall, images that are just like have very powerful significance for me. And so I get to look at those, and if there's moments where my self-regulation, my self-therapist, my attachment system's activated, I can look at these pieces and like just connect really easily back into myself. So it's like what works for us. Again, like the cliche of like symbol of marriage, you know, sure. Like this is a reminder, this is an anchor for people who choose to see it that way. Sure. Or anything, like Ellis is a jewelry guy too, you know, like the significance of different pieces of jewelry and what it means to us. Those can be sort of like anchors and a little bit different than a transition object. But,
something that helps.
Yeah, awesome. And then it's interesting too, Deidre Quinlan calls it mommy dust or daddy dust. You know, that kids want to go lay on their parent's spot in the bed or sit in their parent's chair. And Deidre would just say, here's a little bit of dust there, a little bit of parent dust. So
I think I've had some kids sit in the laundry basket, and it's got like a feel of mom and dad, maybe the dust or something. But I'm thinking of some of the smells. That would be that's part of my guess over there.
Yeah.
Hopefully not too much smell, but
just the right amount of smell. Awesome, Ellis. This is good, and I hope it's helpful for you guys. I think it just, for me even, I worry about my kids' separation anxiety, and my son is a COVID kid. He's 4. He's socially awkward, and I worry about him. So just talking to a friend has helped me regulate, and then talking to a friend who's giving me good advice is even more important. And the fact that Ellis is a psychologist is just awesome. And I will put Ellis's contact information in the description. So if you're worried that you might have lost contact with him and you want to find him, or you just love Ellis because Dr. Ellis, he's awesome, then you can find out how to connect with him below.
Thanks, Tara.
No problem. Take care, guys.